Because of one Hebrew letter, everything that I want to share with you was given to me because of one Hebrew letter. One Hebrew letter that represents one man. One Hebrew letter that represents one king, that represents one redeemer, one kinsman redeemer, one husband, one Hebrew letter. I want to encourage you guys, if you have not began your own journey, your own Damascus Road journey into the language of creation, which is known as the Hebrew language, you are missing out on so much, because the Father connects with his people through language. You connect to people through speech. Speech is one of the first things that was ever used to make a connection with. Words were the first thing that the Creator used to connect things to one another. Before you can even consummate a marriage, before a woman would even dare receive a hand in marriage from a man, that man better have something coming out of his mouth that is real, called words. Powerful. But every single category, you guys, in this Torah portion, every single one, my whole mind has just shifted ever since I started working on that book and finished that book that's in the process of being published. But my whole mind has shifted big time. But every category in this Torah portion has to do with connecting. I want you to hear what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, from Genesis all the way through Revelation, everything has to do with connecting. And I want us to get our minds geared towards that. Everything, even the seasons of disconnecting, is for the intent of reconnecting. Sometimes you have to disconnect from one place in order to reconnect where the Father wants you to be. Otherwise, you'll never bear fruit. From Genesis to Revelation, mind-blowing, is a thread of connections. This Torah portion contains everything that might be up on that board. No, not yet. But everything that I'm going to share with you. It begins with the bondservant. That's a connection. I want you to follow along with me. It talks about murder. That's a disconnection and a reconnection. When you murder someone, you disconnect them from the world that they were in and cause them to be connected to their origin and their original place. But at the same time, that disconnects you from where you're supposed to be and then connects you into a place of judgment. Everything in the Bible, in the scriptures, is about a disconnection and a reconnection. Everything. I think this is important. Killing of a servant, there's a disconnection and a connection. The innocent in the womb that die, a disconnection and a connection. The animal, as well as the animal nature causing death, there's a disconnection and a connection. There's pits of pain. I did a teaching on that in the past. But pits that are uncovered that will cause others to fall into is creating a disconnect as well as a connection. Seduction is disconnecting for the sake of connecting. Oppression is disconnection and connection. All this is in the Torah portion. False reports against your brethren is disconnecting fellowship and relationships and intimate relationships for the sake of connecting to possible Jezebel and Ahab spirits. The Sabbath rest is disconnecting from the things of the world to connect to a divine peace that we just can't put into simple words. Feast days are disconnections from the norm to connect with the Creator at His appointed times. Angelic visitations, these are all in the Torah portion now. From the throne, we have disconnections for the sake of connecting. Gathering of the elders for community, a disconnection for the sake of connecting. Do you guys get it? Obedience to the covenant is a disconnection from disobedience for the sake of a true intimate relationship that's called a connection. Then the Torah portion ends with Moses, his ascent into the mountain one more time, which I truly believe that Moses ascended the mountain 12 times, not 3. 12 times. Most people believe it was 11. I think it was 12 specific times. Look to your neighbor and say, Mishpatim. When we think of judgments, we must keep in mind the court systems, because judgments are actually rendered in a court environment. When you judge someone, whether it's righteously or unrighteously, you've created a court system. If there is an unrighteous way of judging somebody because of just one point, you are operating in misconduct according to the court systems of the heavens above. Very important. The scripture does say that we are to be judges. We are to judge righteously. When we judge righteously, that is causing what is lawful in the heavens to be here connected on the earth. Everything's about connecting, every single thing. When it comes to Elohim and His Word, it speaks of the courtrooms of heaven. It's a higher level than the ones we know. As a matter of fact, the tabernacle gives us a picture of this revelation, as there is what's known as an outer court area. I want you to try to wrap your minds around this. There's an outer court area that would be the place where sin substitution takes place, and every form of accusation is brought in the outer court area. When they brought the animals, they confessed their sins to the priest. And depending on the situation, hands were laid on the animal as a transfer. There's a connection. Do you guys see this? Even in the tabernacle was created to connect with man, because man rejected heaven connecting with earth through the voice that spoke at Mount Sinai. This Torah portion stands right between last week's revelation of Jethro, or Jethro for some, where the covenant was being given to Israel, where the revelation that's not given in that section of scripture, but where the golden calf was being conjured up. And the Torah portion, Teruma, which is next week, I believe. Brittany, you're teaching next week? Who's teaching next week? Oh, Trent's teaching next week. So anyways, next week, I don't know what Trent's teaching on, but next week is Torah portion Teruma. So between Teruma, where it's the whole revelation of the tabernacle and the priesthood, and last week the covenant, stands Mishpatim. This Torah portion is the connector. It's the connector between this one and a connector between that one. And it's up to us to rightfully divide the word of truth and rightfully judge what is supposed to be and what is not supposed to be. To connect what the Father has always intended, as opposed to what man will create as his own personal religion, when the Father says that is a pattern of something greater to bring you back, not to that, but to this. To keep you from going down that road, because to support what is on that side is to disconnect from the life source on this side. Mishpatim. The actual name of this Torah portion, if in my own opinion, should have been named Hamishpatim, because that's how it is in the Torah. The judgments, not just any. It's speaking of a specific set of judgments. It speaks of a set of judgments that express the very character of a covenant relationship. What I've looked at in this Torah portion is, last week dealt with the covenant that was sealed with an altar. This week is the ingredients to that very covenant. Mishpatim contains the ingredients to build up the character of the Most High in that man and woman that will reflect that covenant relationship, to where you don't need a man-made tabernacle or temple, because you have become the habitation of His character on earth. The power of a mishpat, a judgment, holds the ability to bond together two things or people and make them one specific soul. Follow me. Words, you guys, look to your neighbor and say, those words. Words are the transportation of the spirit of man. Words are the transportation of the spirit of a man. And in actuality, this whole Torah portion is seen because of the revelation, like I said, of one Hebrew letter. I was blown away. Every commandment in this Torah portion either connects or disconnects for the sake of connecting because of one Hebrew letter. Even the rabbis say that this Torah portion, because of the Hebrew word ve'ele, and these hamishpatim, the judgments, and these are the judgments. Because of that one letter vav, they say that's connecting to what was talked about last week. It's still an ongoing flow. But that vav, remember the Messiah, when he came, the letter vav speaks of a man, an upright man, speaks of a man. Men are designed, not the women. Men are designed to bring a connection between the kingdom of heaven and earth. Men are designed to connect. Did you hear what I said? I'm not going to get graphic whatsoever, but men were given an anatomy to represent the power of connecting. Men hold the ability to bring two souls together or not. This is deep stuff. Man was created to connect the soul of heaven with the empty shell of earth. Embedded in the anatomy of a man and a woman is this very revelation. Man and woman, when they come together, the Father has embedded in that revelation the creative power and majesty of heaven filling the empty shell of earth that should expel the chaos. Is that too much? One Hebrew letter who begins this Torah portion can be seen orchestrating this idea throughout the entire study. One. And ultimately, the one who connects and disconnects in order for a connection to take place is focused on the bride of the covenant, period. Remember, connection, I'm going to say it a bunch of times, and disconnection throughout all we read in here is present the first time you open the pages of Scripture. So let's look at the name of Mishpatim. I'll leave HaMishpatim alone for now, but I want to look at the title given for this Torah portion, Mishpatim. Are you guys getting this so far, what I'm trying to communicate? The power of connecting is in this Torah portion. This is not just about specific judgments for certain cases that take place. The Father is looking at the natural realm when things transpire and the actions and the things that take place between man and man on earth, between flesh realms. But in the midst of that, He's trying to teach us through free will how to have His character deposited inside of us. That's how we connect His kingdom on earth. Mishpatim, judgments, or I call guardian commandments. Mishpatim are the guardians of the commandments. You have chukim, those are the standing ones. Those are the immovable instructions of the Father that cannot be moved. Chukim, statutes. You have mitzvot, which comes from tzavah, which the heart of those means to cause two things to come together and make them one. The power of a commandment is not to connect you to the mindset of being burdened. The power of the commandments that are given in His covenant are to give you the mindset of the connecting, intimate relationship of the love the Father has for His people. To connect with the love that He has for His people. Not some burden and some type of thing that a donkey would carry on his back. That is not what that is. Mitzvot, mitzvah comes from tzavah. It's the very word used in the Greek in Colossians where He causes all things to consist. The word consist in Greek comes from the Hebrew word tzavah, which means command. He commands things to be unified. It's not a suggestion. Commanding things to be connected on such a high level comes with loyalty. The Father looks for loyalty and honorable people in the midst of snow and ice and heat and hell. That's what he looks for the unity, not to be moved. When people come and go, that's because they're a shattered vessel. Their soul is shattered because of things that have happened in their life. They never were given the direction on how to reconnect and become an immovable soul, a hukim, a statute in a pillar in the house of our King. I'm telling you, this is heavy. Judgments, guardian commands. I want to look at this. The numerical value to this Hebrew word actually sets the premise of this entire Torah portion. 479 is the value for mishpatim, as well as another word that the woman gave birth to in the garden after the experience. Say experience. There's nothing wrong with an experience unless it's at the wrong tree. Experience is good because it deals with the depths of intimacy and the knowledge of one who is beyond you that you have your eyes on. But your eyes make the first connection, and then words because of that are born into the atmosphere that cause you to be driven towards the very thing you looked at. There's nothing wrong with an experience as long as it is at the correct tree called the tree of life. So this phrase that I'm going to give you is what was given birth by the woman in Genesis chapter 3, verse 3. Why? Because after the experience or this connection with the Nachash, the woman added to. She was right then and there, she was disconnected from the order of heaven in the garden. When she said this, Tiegu, you shall not touch, she's saying that of all the trees we may eat, but of this one, we are not supposed to even touch it. She added to, which I truly believe that this word Tiegu comes from the word naga, is where we get the word disease from, or connected to leprosy, the effects of the leprosy or the passage of leprosy to take place. So this woman gave birth to man's leprous condition in the Garden of Eden by what she said. The power of words can cause you to be connected to the wrong thing. This woman that did this would cause her and her husband to disconnect and put on a fallen state, disconnecting them from paradise, but later reconnecting fallen man back to the origin of paradise would be through one man. It's all about a connection. Look to your neighbor, a connection. So I have a question. Who or what have you been or are connected to? Who or what are you connected to? What you connect with will set the destiny for your future. The correct connections are vital. Isn't it interesting that one of the first commands given to Adam, notice not even the woman, to Adam, was to till the ground. He was saying, Adam, I want you to be a servant of the place that I agitated, that caused the dust to come up in which you were formed from. I want you now to return back to the place that I stirred up, which you came from. In other words, he's saying, I want you to till. That means I want you to connect to the Adama. I want you to connect to this place, Adam. Why? Because when you connect to this place, you won't just stand upon particles that you came from. You will be walking in the full weight and glory of the platform that you were formed from. This Torah portion begins with this reminder of connecting. We are reminded of our connection to paradise. The next instruction and command given to man, not Adam, was to disconnect. This is heavy. This is all from this out of this Torah portion. The first command was for man to till the ground. And then the Creator in his wisdom knew that man would fall, so he brought about a commandment saying that man shall disconnect or leave from his father and mother in order to connect to his wife. So he holds it. How do we know that that was not given to Adam per se? Because Adam didn't have a mother. So did he have a belly button? I've heard that question. My responses with a question would say, hey, did Adam have a belly button? I said, did he have a mother? Let them answer it themselves. So this holds a secret, you guys, to the entire world that we live in, what I just said. When we can disconnect in order to connect, this will result in the manifestation of growth and dominion. But this can only be understood, you guys, and accomplished when there is first a disconnect from a source. When man learns to become the bondservant of the ground. I'm stuck on this altar thing. I can't get it out of my spirit, and I don't want it to go. When man connects to the Adama, that's a revelation of an altar, he will end up resembling the very king of that altar. Man has to disconnect in order to connect. The Messiah, many times, look at it, it's everywhere in the scriptures. Many times as he was connected with his disciples, he had to disconnect from everybody and go to a high mountain. He disconnected for the sake of recharging of some sort. We don't have the details. He connected at a high mountain as close as he could get to his Father. And then he was empowered each time to come back and reconnect with his people. The power of connecting and disconnecting is everywhere, and it's vital for every single one of us. When man learns to become the bondservant of the altar, he will resemble the very king of that altar. Man, oh man. And what seems like just mere servanthood in this Torah portion is actually steps to kingship, steps to sonship, all because of one single Hebrew letter. I'm just all messed up in my mind in a good way. That woman added through her words what Yahweh Elohim instructed, and that created a forbidden disconnect. And yet at the same time ushered in the greatest connection of all, that would be Yahweh Elohim restoring all things back to their original order through his Son. When we add to or take away from what the Father says, we then open up the door to falling away or disconnecting, and sometimes indefinitely, and we don't want that. This word the woman spoke became the very garment of the word. The woman in the garden created an actual space within herself. I'm going somewhere with this. She created a space within herself that she would now be able to bear children because of what she said. When she spoke, she made a vacated space in herself that demanded entropy to come upon her. And it came upon her first. I'm not talking down to women, but look at the power of revelation in the Torah. Entropy became her garment at that time, and she was a vagabond. And she became a vagabond, and now she gave to her husband. But look at the power of the Creator. Even though they were both now vagabonds in the Garden of Eden, where they could no longer touch anything. Imagine walking into a Brinks vault, and they said, all the gold and riches that are in here are all yours, but when you go in there, don't touch anything. But just walk by everything. Your entire inheritance is standing by you. But because of words, you became a vagabond spirit by disconnection through things that were said. This is heavy. Now Adam and Eve would create an onion. Is this all right? Even if it's not, I'm going to keep going. Now, Adam and Eve would create an unusual way of connecting. I won't finish everything. that would bring upon the womb of Eve trial and tribulation, which demands plagues. Plagues, according to the prophets, tribulation, the prophet, I think it's Isaiah, Yahweh Elohim says, I create tribulation. So the tribulation I create is to disconnect my people from what they should have never been connected to. And guess what? You need a little push. So I created an entity that you can't touch. That's my own personal midwife. And through 10 tribulational plagues, it'll be like contractions to push you through the narrow place that you're supposed to walk through. You came, prophet Jeremiah. You came from above through a narrow place, so you know the same way you came is the same way you gotta go. You came through a narrow way that led to unrighteousness for a season to present the righteousness when you leave and you graduate after being tested for your lifetime expanse. Man's been on the time clock for 6,000 years. It's almost time to punch out. You will have to be born again and go through a tribulation time with 10 centimeters called plagues to push you out of here into your new kingdom with your king forever. It's about connecting. This would unfold as a prophecy regarding the redemption of a nation. One word can connect or disconnect what is intended to be united. Listen, words create. Words destroy. Words can bring close and cause a distance. Words are what Elohim used to create everything seen and unseen. Words are one of the most powerful building forces and can be one of the most destructive ones. This woman created the platform for the word to come in the flesh and bring redemption to man's fallen state. Men, we hold a vital key in this world. That's why the man is always being chastened and chased by the enemy, because the enemy knows if this man realizes the power that is formed inside of him and he begins to speak the words of the Creator in the atmosphere of his personal life, in the atmosphere of his wife to be or wife that is, in the atmosphere of his children, his grandchildren, his surroundings, everything. When that man becomes what he speaks, he connects everything to the Father through the Son that lives in him. Messiah said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto myself. We become an execution stake that's firmly planted in the ground and saying, as the Messiah is crucified, so I mortify the deeds of my flesh. Why would you do such a thing? Because if he be lifted up as I put myself to death, he will draw all men unto himself.